He showed up on a porch that said go away and sat down like he owned the place. Daniel said no, then no again, then brought out a towel, a water bowl, and a bag of dry food and told himself none of it counted as yes. This is the story of one orange cat, one quiet street, and the kind of love that doesn't ask permission. This is the story of a cat who was simply looking for one person and ended up changing an entire street. Nobody asked for Sunny. That was the honest truth. He appeared on a rainy Thursday morning on the front porch of a narrow gray house on Elmwood Avenue in Portland, Oregon, soaking wet, tail low, amber eyes blinking slowly in the cold. He was orange and white, with a round face that seemed too big for his body, and ears that were slightly too far apart, giving him the permanent expression of someone who had just been told surprising news and hadn't quite processed it yet. He wasn't dramatic about his arrival. He didn't cry, he didn't scratch at the door, he simply sat down on the welcome mat, which said with some irony, "Go away," and waited. Inside lived Daniel. Daniel was 41 years old, recently retired from a logistics job he had held for 16 years, and currently in the middle of what his sister called a very long bad mood. He had moved to Elmwood Avenue 8 months earlier after his divorce, chosen the house specifically because it was on a quiet street where he hoped no one would bother him. He had no pets, no plants, and until that Thursday morning, no unexpected orange visitors on his porch. He saw Sunny through the window. He pulled the curtain back, looked at him for a long moment, then let the curtain fall. "No," he said, to no one. Sunny sat on the welcome mat and waited. By noon, Daniel had brought a bowl of water outside and placed it approximately 4 feet from where Sunny was sitting, far enough, he told himself, that it didn't count as an invitation. Sunny walked to the bowl, drank from it with great dignity, then walked back to the mat and sat down again. By evening, Daniel had Googled how to get a stray cat to leave your porch and read exactly none of the results. By the second morning, Sunny was still there. Here is what Daniel didn't know about Sunny, what nobody on Elmwood Avenue knew yet. Sunny had been living on those streets for at least 4 months based on the estimates of a local animal rescue volunteer named Patricia, who had been trying and failing to catch him since July. He was approximately 3 years old, healthy despite everything, and according to Patricia, the most stubborn cat I have ever attempted to trap, and I have been doing this for 19 years. He had been fed by at least 6 different households on the street, none of whom knew about the others. Mrs. Kowalski at number 2 left tuna on her back step every Tuesday. The college students at number 23 put out kibble on weekends. A retired teacher named Frank at number 31 had been leaving water out since August and referred to Sunny in complete seriousness as my outdoor cat, despite the fact that Sunny had never once acknowledged him directly. But of all the porches on Elmwood Avenue, Sunny had chosen number 19. He had chosen the gray house with the ironic welcome mat and the man who stood behind curtains and said no to empty rooms. Nobody could explain it. Sunny certainly wasn't explaining it. On day 5, it rained again. Daniel opened the front door to check the weather and found Sunny sitting in a puddle on the second porch step, water streaming off his ears, looking not distressed but simply deeply inconvenienced. They looked at each other for a long moment. "Absolutely not," Daniel said. He went inside. He came back 40 seconds later with a folded towel, which he placed under the small overhang to the left of the door. Technically still outside, he noted to himself, technically not an invitation, and went back in. Sunny moved to the towel, curled into it, closed his eyes. Daniel watched through the window for longer than he would ever admit. If you haven't subscribed yet, I want you to know that genuinely stings a little. Hit that subscribe button. I promise you need to see what happens next. It was Mrs. Kowalski who first knocked on Daniel's door about Sunny. She was 73, small, and had absolutely no time for small talk. She said, "I see you've got the orange one." She nodded towards the porch. "He chose you. That means something, you know. Cats don't do that for nothing." Daniel told her he hadn't chosen anything. The cat had simply appeared and he was dealing with it. Mrs. Kowalski looked at the towel under the overhang, she looked at the ceramic water bowl on the second step, she looked at the small pile of dry food in the corner that Daniel had placed there that morning and was now pretending he hadn't. She nodded once and went home. On day 11, Sunny walked inside. Daniel had left the door open while bringing in groceries, just for a moment, just long enough, and when he turned around, Sunny was standing in the middle of the hallway, not running, not frantically exploring, just standing there, looking at the walls, the ceiling, the worn wooden floors, with the calm assessment of someone taking stock of the situation. Daniel set down his groceries. This is not happening. Sunny walked to the living room, jumped onto the armchair by the window, the one that faced the street, and settled in with the unhurried confidence of someone who had already decided this was his chair and was simply now making it official. Daniel did not move him. The first few weeks rewired Daniel's entire daily structure, mostly against his will. Sunny had opinions, strong, consistent, non-negotiable opinions. The armchair was his. The left side of the couch was negotiable, but only between 3 and 6 p.m. Breakfast happened at 7, not 7:15, and if Daniel forgot this, Sunny would sit directly on his chest until the situation was corrected. The hallway light needed to stay on at night. This was not a request. But Sunny also had a habit that Daniel didn't notice until the third week. Every afternoon at exactly 4 o'clock, Sunny would jump down from the armchair, walk to the front window, and sit watching the street. Not anxiously, not restlessly, just watching. Tail curled around his paws, eyes moving slowly from one end of Elmwood Avenue to the other. Daniel started watching too from the couch, and for the first time since moving to that street 8 months ago, he started to notice things. Mrs. Kowalski walking her slow loop every afternoon at 4:15, Frank from number 31 who stopped each time in front of number 19 and looked toward the porch with a small, puzzled expression, the college students from number 23 who slowed their bikes near the house, saw Sunny in the window and waved, actually waved at a cat before pedaling on. One afternoon, Daniel opened the window slightly while Sunny was watching. Within 4 minutes, Frank from number 31 had stopped on the sidewalk below. "Is that him?" Frank called up. "Is that the orange one?" His name is Sunny, and then he was quiet for a moment because it was the first time he had said it out loud, and it surprised him. Frank smiled wide. "I've been feeding him since August. Thought he was mine," he laughed. "Guess he had other plans." That conversation lasted 20 minutes. By the end of it, Daniel knew that Frank was a retired history teacher, that he lived alone at number 31, and that he made, by his own description, a genuinely excellent pot of chili. He also knew that Mrs. Kowalski's first name was Helen, that the college students at number 23 were named Dara and Josh and were studying veterinary medicine, and that at least 4 other households on Elmwood Avenue had been quietly feeding and watching over Sunny for months without knowing about each other. Sunny had been building a community, quietly, patiently, one small act of showing up at a time. And now, without entirely meaning to, he had brought Daniel into it. Some stories are loud. Some rescues happen in a single dramatic moment, a door thrown open, a life changed in an instant. This one was different. This one happened in folded towels and open windows and 20-minute conversations on sidewalks that turned into standing invitations for chili on Friday evenings. It happened in the way Sunny would sit on Daniel's lap on the cold nights and press his warm weight into him, like he was saying, "You are not as alone as you think you are. You never were." It happened in the way Daniel started leaving the curtains open. By January, 3 months after Sunny had walked through that front door, Elmwood Avenue had changed in ways that were small and quiet and entirely real. Frank and Daniel had become, without either of them quite planning it, friends. Helen Kowalski had started joining them on Friday evenings. Dara and Josh had offered to take Sunny to their clinic for a full checkup, which revealed he was in perfect health and approximately 3.5 years old, and had, according to the vet's notes, an unusually confident personality. Nobody on the street was surprised by that. And Sunny still sat in his armchair every afternoon at 4 o'clock, watching the street with his ears slightly too far apart and his amber eyes moving slowly from one end of Elmwood Avenue to the other, still watching, still present, still exactly where he had decided to be. A stray cat nobody had asked for, a man who said no through a curtain, a welcome mat that said go away, and somehow, because of one small orange cat with a stubborn streak and an unerring instinct for the people who needed finding, a quiet street had become something that felt against all odds like a neighborhood. Because love doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it just sits on your porch in the rain and waits until you open the door. And sometimes the ones who choose us know something about us that we haven't figured out ourselves yet. If you've ever been found by an animal you weren't looking for, tell me about it in the comments. Or tell me this, do you think Sunny chose Daniel on purpose, or do you think it was just fate? I want to hear what you believe.